Hello and welcome to the Lehigh Valley Passport to History's monthly virtual program. I'm your host, George Wacker of Lehigh Valley with Love Media. Each episode highlights a different theme and discussion for the night's participating historic sites. Lehigh Valley Passport to History is a partnership of 60 plus historic sites and resources in and around Pennsylvania's Lehigh and Northampton counties. The group helps to promote local tourism and shares historical activities, events, tours, exhibitions all throughout the valley. Lehigh Valley Passport to History is funded in part with funding received through the County of Northampton's Hotel Tax Program, the Lehigh County Tourism Development Grant Program, and the Institute of Museum and Library Services. Visit lvhistory.org for more information. You're looking at it right here. A lot of the stuff we're going to talk about here, you can learn more about it on these sites or get to some of the partner sites through it. Tonight, we are talking about education, and we are pleased to have participating speakers, Linda Kortz of Governor Wolfe Historical Society and Candace Perry of Schwenkfelder Library and Heritage Center. Hello. Thank you guys so much. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and I'm looking forward to this. And before this began, we were talking a little bit about how these presentations work well with each other, and I'm looking forward to learning more about it myself. Candace, we're going to get right into it. I'm going to bring up your site, and if you want to give a little bit of an overview, and then we'll go right into some of the images that you have to share as well.
All righty. Yes, thank you. Thank you, George. So I'm with the Schwenkfelder Library and Heritage Center in Pennsburg in Montgomery County. We're a little out of the Lehigh Valley, but the southern Lehigh County is part of our interpretive area. So we do have collections and often talk about southern Lehigh County and, of course, eastern Berks and western Montgomery. So tonight, I'm going to talk a little bit about colonial education, meaning education before the Revolutionary War, from the time of settlement to the Revolutionary War, and specifically that among the Pennsylvania Germans. That's what we do here at the Schwenkfelder Library and Heritage Center. I say we're all German all the time, so that's what our focus is on. And first, I just wanted to say a little bit about sectarian schools. When I say sectarian schools, I mean specifically schools that were run by German speakers who were Mennonite, Schwenkfelder, Moravian, people of that kind of background in the colonial period. These groups really had some of the best organized schools at the time, and some individuals who were associated with these schools who were very significant to the education of young Germans in our part of Pennsylvania. And specifically, a man named Christopher Dock. Some of you may have heard of him because there's a school named after him, there's a continuing care facility named after him, but a very significant colonial figure, was born in the 17th century and immigrated here in the early 18th century and began teaching before 1720. That is a long time ago to begin to have been teaching. And he was a very significant figure in early education among the Mennonites and possibly others in central Montgomery County. He wrote something called the Schulordnung in 1750, which was a school management book. It's said to be I think the first pedagogy or the teaching manual printed in the United States. And it was published in 1750, although he wrote it in published in 1770, although he wrote it in 1750. And it really laid out the art of teaching and how to teach with kindness and patience rather than the switch and punishment, as was often the case in that colonial period. So a very significant individual, but by the 1750s, a movement had come along in Pennsylvania, specifically in southeastern and central Pennsylvania, called the German Free Schools, which was something that was come up with by members of the Quaker and English communities and the German Reformed Church community to educate and actually anglicize the Germans, to make sure the Germans were learning English and learning English customs. Well, needless to say, Germans were not very fond of this little thing, and the schools eventually failed. They didn't last for very long, from about 1755 to the early 1760s. And during that time, the schooling was still going on, but under the Germans' terms. So we were still having schools, probably in the home. There was a lot of homeschooling, but as for any kind of school systems, there weren't really that many kinds of things, except perhaps through individual churches, especially after this attempt to do an anglicized schooling failed. Okay, George, you can put up my first slide there. So anyway, but the Schwenkfelder group, which is the group that the German speakers and I interpret here at the Schwenkfelder Library and Heritage Center, in 1764 formed what was kind of a school system that was somewhat ahead of its time. Now, scholars looking at it in the early 20th century called it a public school system, but the way we understand public school systems, that probably wasn't exactly true. It was a school system that was subsidized by Schwenkfelder families, and it was open to all. It wasn't open just to members of the Schwenkfelder communities. It was open to all, and they laid out all the bylaws in this book that I'm showing you a title page for, which was specifically called Certain Agreements and Fundamental Articles for the Establishment and Support of a School System in the Districts of Skippack, which is in central Montgomery County, and Goshenhoppen, which is the area around Pennsburg. I'm sure many of you have heard of the Goshenhoppen Festival. So anyway, they formed this public school system available to all, and those who could not pay would be subsidized. But it really wasn't a public school system, as I said, the way we understand it, because it didn't use public funding, but they did allow anyone to come and help others who could not come. This worked for a pretty long time. Let's see, it went on for about 60 years, which was a good long time, until they abandoned the system in 1825 and then became working more within the community school system. And then, of course, in 1834, and I'm sure you'll hear with Linda's presentation, the Free Public School Act of Pennsylvania was introduced. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the teaching tools that were specific to our German schools here in Montgomery, Berks, and Southern Lehigh. What you're being shown here is what we call, or what is known as, not we call it, a copybook. And this book would have been set by a schoolmaster at the top of the page. You might notice that the writing at the top of the page is quite good, and then the writing below it isn't as good. So the schoolmaster was setting the page at the top, and then the student was copying at the bottom of the page. This was owned by a boy named George Schultz, and probably from the Hereford vicinity of Berks County. Okay, next one, George. Now, this is another form of writing practice, if you will. This is known as a Vorschrift, or a writing model, and this was made by a schoolmaster named Abraham Seibert, and he was a teacher at Macungie in Lehigh County. He was a Schwenkfelder descendant, but he himself, I don't think he was a practicing Schwenkfelder at this time, although I'm not sure. This Vorschrift was a common teaching tool that was made by schoolmasters all the way from their European roots and well into the 19th century, until the Free Public School Act pretty much did away with these kinds of Germanic educational traditions. Often these really just served as presentation pieces that a teacher would give to his students. But you can see toward the middle, I hope you can tell, because I know this is in script that most of you are not familiar with, but towards the center of this manuscript, you can see lines of letters that's actually the alphabet. And in reality, those were meant to be copied so a student could learn how to properly write his alphabet. This is done in German Frakturschrift and in German script. The top is Fraktur and the bottom is script. And okay, the next one, George. So here we're skipping over to another form of a workbook from a little bit later time period. This is a ciphering book. This is actually a math workbook that was very beautifully embellished by the schoolmaster, who was a man named Samuel Schultz in Hereford Township in Berks County. So this would have been Andrew Schultz's workbook to do all of his math problems. And once again, the schoolmaster would lay out the problem on each page, and then the student would do the problem solving, much as one would do in a workbook today. And this is from 1829, as you can see. Okay, and the next one, George. And then this is just a very typical little drawing. It's very small. It's about 4 by 3, that would have been given by a schoolmaster to a student who was who had done uh, done some good accomplishments or achieved everything he needed to achieve. And they were often little gifts. And this is a tradition that dates at least back to Christopher Dock, who I talked about at the top of the presentation, who would make these little drawings of birds or flowers to give to children who had done their work properly, or done a special achievement or something like that. So it was a very special little gift. So that's just a little tip of the iceberg that I can talk about, of colonial education, and a little bit into the 19th century, but what type of education was available to German children here in Pennsylvania during that time period.
The detail and that is like a work of art, really, to
They
see
are.
some of
They
those.
absolutely
It's
are.
just amazing.
But they actually have very practical purposes. Here we have these objects that are very artistic and creative and amazing, but
Hmm.
they are definitely utilitarian objects that were used to teach.
Right. No, it's fascinating. Beyond that, is there anything going on now that you want to plug? We do have your website up here, which is schwenkfelder.org. I'll put that in the comments.
Yeah. Well, you may be seeing the slide go by of J.F. Hartranft. We have an upcoming exhibit on John Frederick Hartranft, who was a Civil War general and Pennsylvania governor, and the Schwenkfelder experience in the Civil War. And that is coming up the end of September. We're very looking very much forward to that. That's not something we've done a lot of in the past. And J.F. Hartranft was a Schwenkfelder descendant. So we're very happy to celebrate him. He was a really interesting man and a man of great honor and integrity, we think.
All right. Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to have you on again. I think you're
Thank you,
my
George.
first repeat guest.
Oh, okay.
So, no, it's fun. So thank you so much for that. And for everybody listening, we did put the Schwenkfelder.org in the comments. You can find out more information about them. And Candace, I know that you have to sign off, but we appreciate it very much. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, George.
See ya.
Good night.
Oh, you can say it again. I'm sorry I cut you off.
Oh, good night, everybody. Thank you.
Whoops. Moving on. I mean, it's really fascinating, like looking at all those old documents and just going and imagining how they were using them in the classroom. It's just so interesting. We are now talking with Linda Kortz from Governor Wolfe Historical Society. And I know we're going to watch a video, but before that, do you want to tell us a little bit more about the Governor Wolfe Historical Society?
Yes, thank you for having us. And we are the start of public education in the state of Pennsylvania. It's a long story, and I will keep it very short and brief. This was the academy that you're looking at now. Back in the 1930s, it had been the one of the schools in this area that was erected because the farmers, Pennsylvania Dutch and the Scots-Irish, could not afford to send their young men to school in Philadelphia. So the Scots-Irish came to George Wolfe's father and said, let's build an academy to educate our sons. And he said, well, no, I don't think so. And they talked him into it. And so in 1785, they built the academy. You'll see a photograph of it. We have restored it completely. Due to Eli Spangler, that's the academy, due to Eli Spangler, an attorney here in Bath, who in 1953 recognized the value of this site and didn't want it bulldozed. We also own the Ralston McKean House, which is sitting next to it right there. That was erected by Squire James Ralston, who also laid out the town of Bath and then lost the house in 1 year. We don't know why, but it was purchased by the Thomas McKean family, which, interestingly enough, they were one of the families that helped start Lafayette College. The academy flourished for about 40 years and then started going down in interest. It became a debating society. And then over the years, it became abandoned and literally was turned into a barn and ready for the bulldozer. So now we proudly own it. And the story of education starts here. If you were educated in Pennsylvania in a public school or taught in a public school, this is your Mecca. You should come and light a candle. Back in which our last presenter talked about, it was primarily private schools. If you were a girl, you weren't educated at all. This is a sampler. I'm going to put it hopefully so you can get the idea. If you notice, there is no K on the sampler, or no J. I'm sorry. It goes IKL. This was a German sampler from 1770. And the reason there was no J was because the Germans thought using the J, which began Jesus, was sacrilegious to use it on a piece of artwork. So we have samplers that we can date by, if they had the crown, they were still British. If they had no J, they were very stout Germans, Lutheran or Reformed. Girls could not get an education, but this was considered a way to learn your ABCs, but learning how to sew, which was very important for women at that time. The Governor Wolfe Academy was started, and he became one of the first students in that class to get an English and total classical education, learning the mathematics, classics. When he graduated, he became an attorney in Easton. From there, he moved into the state representatives house, and then from there into the national government and the Congress. There, they thought, you are so progressive. Pennsylvania is a disaster. We were the Keystone State, but we weren't. We were the lump in the road. People couldn't speak each other's languages. No one could read. It was an attorney's dream because they were constantly writing and reading things for people who could not. So with the academy, George Wolfe's education, he knew to unify the state, he had to educate it. And from there, we go into the story of George Wolfe. And we'll now have our little video that we had done that explains who he was. He was one of the most progressive governors we have had.
Okay, and at this time, we'll play that video.
Hello. As I sit here writing the final lines to the Common School Act that I hope will soon be approved by the Pennsylvania State Legislature, I can't help but reflect on the long journey from my early life as a rural farm boy to the governor's chair. I've had a good life due to my German father, George Wolfe Sr., who in 1751 left the Alsace area of Germany for Pennsylvania, where freedom of religion and acceptance of all promised a better life. Upon his arrival, he settled here in Northampton County with other Germans. In addition to the Germans, the Scots-Irish also settled here in the county from their war-torn countries for the same opportunities. I was born August 12th, 1777, and grew up as a farm boy. A few years later, a Scotsman approached my father about building a school for the sons of both the Scotch-Irish and German farmers in the area. As the Scotch-Irish and Germans did not normally mingle with each other, my father first said no. After some thought, he finally agreed that his son should be educated, and he helped to raise the funds to build the Allen Academy in 1785. Working to help people and a strong belief that education is the key to creating a literate citizenry have been common threads in my life. I am filled with humility and a gratitude that sitting in this chair, I now have the chance to pass on to the children of Pennsylvania the amazing opportunity for education I received as a child at the Allen Academy.
Wolf's principles, vision, and strength as a progressive helped elect him into government office. He was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives in 1824, where he was urged to run for governor of Pennsylvania to unify the state's many factions. He held the office of governor from 1829 to 1835 and was the first to have an office in the capital to meet citizens and hear their concerns. Wolf extended the canal system into 56 counties. He encouraged railroads and promoted the printing industry, helping farmers and commerce prosper. On April 1st, 1834, after heated debates, Wolf won. He signed the Common School Act into law, assuring every child an education regardless of wealth, race, religion, nationality, or gender. He lost his next election to an opponent who tried unsuccessfully to eliminate the law. Wolf became known as the father of public education. This quickly advanced the success of the entire Commonwealth. Wolf was then appointed as the first comptroller of the United States Treasury in 1836. In 1838, he became the collector of customs for the massive port of Philadelphia. All goods arriving and leaving paid customs fees, which was the main source of funding for the United States. The crash of 1839, however, created national hysteria, almost stopping the movement of goods. Wolf died in Philadelphia on March 11, 1840, at the age of 62. He is buried in Harrisburg. By the beginning of the 1860s, the Keystone State was literate. Business boomed, and Southern growers shipped to the industrial North smoothly. PA goods could be shipped easily across the state. Women opened businesses. The power of an educated person assures success. What a monumental life legacy for a Northampton County farm boy.
That we tried.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I had to unmute you. You can start over. Go ahead.
I did. I hoped everyone enjoyed that. We took the story of Governor Wolf, which is quite extensive, and tried to get it in an easy to understand format. He came from this area. He grew up probably a mile from our site. We own 3 historic buildings on our site, having restored all of them from crumbles to what they look like in this photograph. This was the original building of the that I'm sitting in, but it's been extended over the years, and that was a typical schoolhouse from the 1800s.
And I know that you had. Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Right ahead.
No, continue to go, and then when you're ready,
Okay.
I'll show some of the photos.
This is the Nye herb garden that we have, which was common in those days. Again, this site is one that we have 3 historic buildings that are open. We have many, many events. All 3 buildings are used. We have everything from a tavern night, the second Friday of every night. This year will be our 40th annual historic house tour. Every one of these buildings will be jammed with historic demonstrators. We have a new museum, and this little desk is sitting in our museum that shows different things as school would have been in the 1800s. I actually attended a one-room school for my first grade, and I'm so glad I did. This was the original teacher here in the building that I am in now. And I understand he was quite strict, but it was an education where girls, for the first time, could be educated. And that is what got Governor Wolf kicked out of office. What a waste, they were told, that women were going to be educated. These are some of the school children that came through here. That's the old academy door. And they would pose in front of that in their very best to have their school pictures taken.
This picture's so clear. I mean, it's so amazing.
That was probably early 1900s, that picture. And this was a dedication for the 100th anniversary of the Public Education Act back in the 1930s. And again, our site, we've just done exterior lighting. Thank you. We are a nonprofit organization. We get no federal or state funding whatsoever. It's an interesting group of people that are here on the board and that are our members, and extremely progressive. This is myself with the lady who donated all the money for the new museum, and Power. It was either give it to the tax man or give it to us. So you
made the right decision on this one, I think.
She did. And I used to own a company that did museums, so it was a perfect match.
It's great. I think I have another interesting one here. Is another 1930.
This is a 1930 of again, typical school children. Interestingly enough, boys could not attend every day because maybe they still had to help on the farm and they would leave. But the girls stayed. And actually, by the time of the Civil War, women were more fluent than men, and they helped save a lot of farms because maybe the husband could sign his name, but could not read all the documents, and the girl, his wife, could. So, not that I want to sound like a women's liber, but this was the beginning.
No, that's great.
For the state of Pennsylvania.
I'm proud to go. I'm an alumni of Moravian University, which was the first to educate women as well. So I think it's amazing. It's amazing that that history comes from Northampton County. Just to think that he was a rural farm boy, and went to such heights is really amazing. Well, it's amazing that you preserved so much.
Oh, thank you. He died of a heart attack after the crash in 1939. He died in 1839. He died in 1840. And that port, when Philadelphia, the port closed, which was very much like not being able to get goods back and forth now. It's kind of a same old, same old. Right. I think the stress was so, he was so dedicated to what he was doing that it was too much, and he passed away very early. But he did a tremendous amount of work for what he office that he held.
Absolutely. So, and
thank you.
I have some of the events up here. I didn't know if you wanted to talk.
Next weekend we have an annual picnic.
Yeah.
It's all the buildings are open, and anyone who wants to is invited to come. We're at in the town of Bath, and the address is 6600 Jacksonville Road, Bath, Pennsylvania. We have the second Tuesday in September, we have Tavern Night. We have oldies and blues bands come in. It's a BYOB, and you don't feel like a chaperone when you come to one.
And of course, if you go to the website, which we did drop in the comments, you can, of course, learn more about it. You can donate. You can join. And in fact, we're going to be in Bath on Saturday for the Spuds and Suds event. So maybe we'll come back up on Sunday, too.
Okay, wonderful. And we are open. The site is open this coming Saturday, the 20th. It's open for your tour for the site. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. I love these because not only does the audience learn, but I also learn, and it's amazing of all these. So
it really is, and I think what Passport to History has done. The county has to promote all of these historic sites is just above and beyond.
Well, Linda, thank you so much, and of course, thank you to Candace who had to stop off. And for everybody, please visit lbhistory.org. for more information about these sites and many others. And maybe we'll see you this weekend. So thank you so much.
Thank you.